And here we are, back where Thames meets dock, and this is the Haven building, which also houses the marina office. I'll show you this bit first. It's great lock gates and its bridge and tide markers. There are ones with Roman numerals on like that around here and in other places along the Thames. But I'll take you somewhere now and then you'll rejoin me just there. But not rejoin me, but that's where we'll be walking to. And when we've finished at St Katharine's Dock and everywhere we're going, one of our ending segments off, like to end us off, you'll join me just north of St Katharine's Dock, round that way, for another cracking little piece of history. And this is where I wanted to take you to, just round the back of the marina office, and that sounds like Tower Bridge is going to lift. I already captured one great thing inadvertently the other day, the Waverley, so we'll go and have a look. I'm keeping my eye on it. There's still people going across, so it won't be opening just yet. That's where I said you'd rejoin me, but it wasn't a pausing moment. Forgive me if I'm not quite with it. It's been an all-nighter, and I'm not getting any younger, you know. The lock, high and low tide on the Thames vary by 9 to 10 metres. A vessel entering St Katharine's Dock must first pass through a lock, which raises it from the river's level to the level of the dock. The water level in the lock is lowered by opening a gravitational two-way valve and by draining water into the river. When the levels of the lock and river match, the outer gate is lowered and the waiting vessel enters the lock. The outer gate is raised and the water levels between lock and dock are equalised by drawing water through another valve, and then the inner gate is lowered and the vessel enters the dock. The procedure is reversed to allow the vessel to leave. Yep, there's still cars going across, so they're good. And this shows you the procedure. Coming in and going out. And another little piece of history from our own time here. On the occasion of the visit of Her Majesty Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands, this plaque was presented to St Katharine's Dock by TWF Flotilla to commemorate 300 years of Anglo-Dutch maritime friendship, 29th of June 1989. And here you see William of Orange, 1688. Shades of Glorious Revolution. Oh, it may have just closed because it doesn't look as though anything much is happening there, so we may have missed it. But never fear, I inadvertently caught something the other day. A paddle steamer called the Waverley going through, so that was interesting. And the lock keeper's house we will see in a minute, which is directly behind me. You get better views of it when you come out here. Here is the lock, which separates Thames from dock. and also protects the area from flooding. You can see how it works here. Those big wheels. And the wires, the metal wires, the great metal wires which will lift these big log gates up and down. Yeah, we must have missed what was going through, I think, because there's nothing there. Sundial. The sundial is one of man's oldest astronomical instruments. In this particular form, known as an equinoctial sundial, the dial is in the same plane as the Earth's equator, and the genome, or rod, is parallel to the axis of the Earth, pointing true north. The shadow of the genome moving across the dial indicates the time in summer, and the shadow falls on the face of the dial in the winter. On the inner edge, due to a combination of the tilt of the Earth's axis and the varying speed of the Earth's progress on its elliptical path around the Sun, the time indicated differs by several minutes from the time shown by the clock, which measures mean time, an average of these variants. So that's that. Wire's getting on my nerves, it keeps coming undone. And that's the lock keeper's house just there. A cannon. Take it over this way. This grand old lady needs no introduction, of course. But what I captured the other day was the paddle steamer Waverley going through, and she gave a big roar of a ship's whistle or horn, whatever you call it, as she went through. Me and Sam Tucker had only been talking about paddle steamers one or two conversations before. Bear Tower Bridge in mind for in a minute, and its macabre piece of history, but before we go there, something a little more light-hearted. There we are. Girl with a Dolphin by David Wynne, 1973. There's its plaque. And here is the girl with a dolphin. My goodness, she's in a most shocking state of undress. Might well be seen by respectable married women or young children. This would bring shocked Victorian peoples running with fig leaves and sheets with which to cover her modesty. Dolphin they'd probably be alright with. Tower Bridge and its macabre piece of history, which I'll take you to now. Which is just here. This is called Dead Man's Hole, and it leads down to this cobbled area, very easily accessed. And the reason it's called Dead Man's Hole, because of one reason or other, the way the tides go, the Thames, bodies that go in a certain part of the Thames, either by suicide, murder, accident or dumped, used to wash up here, and still do sometimes. And this area here, called Dead Man's Hole, it leads to what is possibly England's only mortuary under a bridge, and some poor soul would have to come out and fish the bodies out, take them through there into the mortuary, and they would await identification and collection either by the grief-stricken relatives or the relevant authorities, i.e. the undertaker or anatomists if no one claimed them. So that's Dead Man's Hole, and I'll take you to the opposite side of it now, and it's twin on the opposite side of the river, which I will show you if we can see it from here, which I think we may be able to. No, but anyone that's watched my tour series will remember it, because it's twin just on the span, and underneath the span on the opposite side of the river there, that's a bar, and a cracking little place to go. And you remember Butler's Wharf that we spoke about in the tea trade. Butler's Wharf begins here. There. All luxury apartments nowadays with shops and bars and things like that below. And there is the old Anchor Brew House. Lovely building with a cracking bit of history to it. And of course, Horsley Down Old Stairs, which you may all remember. Yeah, in the twin of Dead Man's Hole on the opposite side of the river, it's a bar, and this one was used for fishing dead people out of the river, because this is the side they tended to wash in at. Now I'll point you up, because there are people rough sleeping, which will be just behind me, and I don't want to show them. Poor souls have it hard enough without being put all on the internet. And here is Dead Man's Hole. And someone would come out from here, fish the bodies out, and they'd be carried back in. As I say, awaiting identification. And what would they fish those dead bodies out with? I shall show you now. As we go through towards Tower Wharf, inside this gatehouse here, which goes underneath the bridge, is this hook on a very, very long pole. There were originally two of them, a shorter one. The shorter one went missing or was stolen. You see the hook there. That's the hook that they would use to fish the bodies out from Dead Man's Hole. So that's a cheerful little snippet of history, isn't it? And this takes us through onto Tower Wharf. Back through the gatehouse. And up at Tower Bridge. With its very, over here, elaborate memorial stone. As the royal arms of the Lion and the Unicorn. Sadly, the unicorn has lost its horn, snapped off. This memorial stone was laid by His Royal Highness Albert Edward, Prince of Wales, KG, on behalf of Her Majesty Queen Victoria, Monday, June the 21st, 1889, in the 50th year of Her Majesty's long, happy and prosperous reign. So there. And on many of the pages you'll see many an old photograph of people sitting on those and having had their photo taken with Tower Bridge in the background. And that thing, the alarm going off, I believe is probably just being tested, because it's done it 3 times this morning and the bridge hasn't lifted, so they must be testing it. We go onto the cobbled walkway of Tower Wharf, and like with our macabre pieces of history in part 1, the site of the scaffold on Tower Hill, Dead Man's Hole just now, we're going to our next macabre piece of history in a sec. But the Tower, one of London's oldest buildings, and the oldest part of it will be coming into sight in a minute, which I shall show you. This is called the Salt Tower there. It's one of the most haunted parts. It's where a lot of the Catholic priests, including Father John Gerard, were imprisoned. He was one of the few men to escape the Tower of London. The first being in Norman times the Bishop of London, Ranulph Flambard. A very fat man who managed to climb out onto a rope, which was much too short. But bearing in mind what would likely to have happened to him, rope burn and the risk of a broken ankle was far better than what this place would have offered up, and particularly William the Conqueror, who was a very ruthless man. So yeah, he escaped and sodded off back to Normandy. And this is the oldest part of the Tower of London here. The White Tower began in the reign of William the Conqueror. And what the tower is most famous for, really, particularly nowadays, because it's hyped up quite a lot too, are its executions, particularly those in the reign of King Henry VIII. And on to our next macabre piece of history I lead us interested in, and this is a very, very iconic piece of history what I'm going to take you to now. This is St Thomas's Tower. Now, when it was built, the river came right up to here. The later building of Tower Wharf is what helped to drain the moat of its water and sewage and disease-riddenness. But in the day of this building, when it went up, the gatehouse here, what we're going to see, which is our iconic and macabre piece of history, wasn't macabre then. This is St Thomas's Tower, and above is the Royal Medieval Palace, and the tower dates from 1280, and when it went up from the reign of old King Edward I, when it went up, this was the gateway through which the king would come and the royal family to get into their royal palace just above. But later on, this gate would become far more synonymous and dark for being Traitors' Gate. Many of the great ones went through here. Anne Boleyn, Thomas More, Catherine Howard, Bishop John Fisher, and nearly all of them didn't come back out again. And as I say, the wharf now prevents river access to Traitors' Gate, but those prisoners were being rowed in a barge or a boat right up to the very gate, the entrance to which is marked. If you stand on the opposite side of the river, you can see it clearly. Entrance to Traitors' Gate, which is just below us there, as our American friends like to call it, Traitors' Gate. And here we are. And you may remember my mention of the Keeper of the Heads. Now, they say the lucky ones were lucky enough just to have their heads stricken off, and that was it. And some of that didn't go too well for some of them, like Thomas Cromwell. It took many blows of the axe to take his head off. But many people were hung, drawn and quartered, meaning they would be taken from here, drawn up Tower Hill on a hurdle to where their place of execution would be. They would be hanged until they were partially dead, cut down, and then they would be put onto a table or a board. Their stomach would be cut open and their innards taken out, their private parts cut off, and both innards and private parts thrown on the fire before them. They were still living, many of these people, as this happened to them. Then would come the mercy blow of cutting the head off. They'd cut the head off and then they would quarter the body, hence the hanging, drawing and quartering. And there was a man whose sole occupation was the Keeper of the Heads, whose occupation was to preserve the heads and other body parts by boiling them and tarring them, to ensure that they could be stuck up around the kingdom, the heads particularly on London Bridge, to act as a warning to other potential wrongdoers. So yeah, working from this place and around London Bridge was a fella whose occupation was the Keeper of the Heads. So, nice. He was a lovely chap to go and have a drink with, wasn't he? Oh look, you can see Tower Bridge is opening. Test run. Nothing has been or gone through, so they do have test runs every now and then. It's the first time I've ever seen a test run. It's usually a boat coming through or a ship, of which I've been lucky enough to catch several. The bridge used to open way more than it does now, but it still opens a lot. So if something you'd like to see, go online, type in Tower Bridge lift times, and you'll find out online when the bridge is going to lift and you can come here and see it. Anyway, for our main culprit, what we actually came here for, St Katharine's Dock, which originated with St Katharine's by the Tower, which is why I've been eager to show the Tower. As I say, our main focal point, what we came here for, St Katharine's Dock. And you see just how busy the Andalusia is now, which is why I prefer to try and cover things early, and kindly enough they let me in early because my time slot was 12 o'clock, but it opens bang on 10 o'clock and they let me in. And as I say, the Andalusia stay here has been extended to the 14th now, so for anyone that may have missed it and thought, oh, it goes on the 6th, I've missed it, you haven't, you can come and see it. So, in the area I wanted to show you, because we began our journey at St Katharine's Dock this morning over there, and I said to you I wanted to show you along here. And for our delight and delectation, and she wasn't here this morning, here is sailing barge Gladys, which anyone that's been on my page for a while will remember her sailing through Tower Bridge. And here next to her is sailing barge Aden. You'll join me just over there, and then we'll get some more views. Here we are. We was just over there. You've got these enamel murals along here. Tower Hotel. Sailing barge Gladys. Just through there is Tower Bridge, and you'll now join me down on here as we walk alongside sailing barge Gladys. And you remember I said to you about the new built upon the old? Well, here you see it with the old brickwork of the dock wall. These great iron pillars, and the newer built on top. And these, a nice little remnant of the past. Many a ship would have moored up on those. This is the Aden. I did want to cover along this way, just to show you. Look, there's another one of them little chip mooring rings there. And that concludes this particular coverage. Now for some historical images. Unlike most of our historical images segments, with this one I've mixed things up a little bit. We start more or less in our own time and work our way backwards. Now you'll remember the ivory house that I was so taken with because of the ancestral links. Did get the permission visiting to that. That will be a completely separate video. But in 2012 and before, it was used for something called the medieval banquet. That business is now permanently closed, but this is an image of the exterior of it. The images online for inside at that time aren't copyright free, but if you check online you can see loads of cracking images of the medieval banquets inside. We jump back to 1981, and there you can see the ivory house, and right over to the extreme right, what now serves as the marina office. 1981 again. And you remember right at the beginning, the start of our tour in part 1, when I pointed over towards the right and showed the modern looking buildings and said the pillars are old and the building was built upon those pillars. These are those pillars, and the buildings that we saw would be built upon them. 1960s and 70s, these upcoming set of images, and it comes from an interesting point from the docks. 1967 was the time they closed, but at the time, by a pure chance, Peter Sedgley, an artist painter, was visiting a friend who had a small yacht moored in St Katharine's eastern dock. It was in 1967, and as it happened, it was the only and last vessel to be there, as the docks were closing. Sedgley was overwhelmed by the sensation of this environment and had a wild idea of inspiration that he might have a solution to his own private need for a studio, and to be combined with the possibility of other artists who he knew were looking for space. Following official inquiries, Sedgley, along with Bridget Riley, Peter Townsend and others, founded a charity, this time for the benefit of needy artists, to acquire studio premises at affordable rents. Space, provisions, artistic, cultural and educational space was established, and throughout the good offices of the new dock owners, the Greater London Council, Desmond Plummer, the leader of the GLC, proposed a lease for the peppercorn rent of £500 per year to use a warehouse and the match shed as a large ancillary space, and for 2 years. The 1970s. Again, and you can see pretty much how run down it was. And when I look at these old images, I get quite envious, because I wish I'd been around at the time, because it would have been an explorer's dream come true to wander in and out some of these. Dead Man's Hole, Tower Bridge and the Tower Bridge mortuary. Interesting little macabre piece of history, wasn't it? But a little bit more on that. Postmortem of Jakobs. Josef Jakobs, who anyone who's watched my Tower of London coverages, which there are quite a few of, was the last man to be executed in the Tower of London. On Friday the 15th of August 1941, after Jakobs' execution at the Tower of London, his body was transferred to Tower Bridge mortuary. Sir Bernard Spilsbury and East District Coroner W.R.H. Heady performed the post-mortem on Jakobs. Jakobs' body may have been stored in the mortuary until Monday the 18th, 1941, when it was transferred to St Mary's Roman Catholic Cemetery, Kensal Green, for burial. And here is the inside of the mortuary in the 1970s. And here is what it looks like nowadays. Nice aerial view taken from Tower Bridge of St Katharine's Dock in the 1950s. Aerial shot again, taken from Tower Bridge. But if you look over to the bottom to middle left, the buildings with the cranes, where the arrow is just pointing now, you can see the wartime damage with the roof and floors just completely blown in. August 1948, and the entrance to the dock with its old original lock gates. The lock keeper's house. World War II. So this image 1939 to 1945. shows the fires and carnage that was wrought at St Katharine's Dock. Now, when we cover our St Katharine's Dock, What Lies Beneath, which is a small two-part series, they're not very long videos for me. The first one possibly maybe a bit longer, the ancestry-based one, but the second one, we really get to see in that series the carnage that was wrought, but we get to see it in our own time, where you can see new built upon old. 19th century, and this is St Katharine's Dock in its heyday, up and running, and I love this image. It's a bit after my ancestors' time, but shows pretty much the work that they would have been engaged in. These men in the foreground are the supervisors and superiors in charge of the wines and rums and ports and things like that. But the men over to the right, they're the type of men like Charles Lee Senior and Junior. A nice little hark back. And inside one of the warehouses in the 19th century, you can see the carts pulled up at the front and everything being loaded on and off. What a busy, bustling world it was. 1882, and Jumbo the elephant on way to St Katharine's Dock. Jumbo the elephant was bought by P.T. Barnum and made her way from St Katharine's Dock over to America. (1860s), a flourishing St Katharine's Dock, still with many sail ships like the Cutty Sark and such like. And the opening of St Katharine's Dock in 1828. Unlike earlier docks, there seems to have been only a modest ceremony, with no state officials of note attending. Taking part on the occasion was the Mary, a ship that traded with Russia. On its deck were 40 veteran sailors who had served under Nelson at the Battle of Trafalgar, collected from Greenwich Hospital. So this would have been a nice outing for these old sailors, and good that they were remembered and honoured still in their time, and still are today, of course. Couldn't help showing this image again, although we saw it at the beginning of part 1. And this is 1825, and this is the view of the proposed St Katharine's Dock. So this is it as they proposed it to be and planned it. So blueprints really, but very detailed ones, and you can see the tower over to the left there, and of course no Tower Bridge at this time. The following extract from Rock's map of 1746 shows the same area. Tower Bridge has yet to be built, the area that would become St Katharine's Dock to the right of the tower, and consists of a number of streets, church, cloisters and gardens. John Rock's map of London is fascinating, and it helps a lot with particularly our Thames side series that we're doing quite a bit of recently. And here's the east end of St Katharine's Church, the chapel of the hospice, before its removal in the 19th century. This building will feature again in the life of Charlotte Lydia Ann Everton, our working class Londoner who worked her way up to be housekeeper. The Royal Hospital and Collegate Church of St Katharine by the Tower, demolished in 1825 to make way from St Katharine's Dock. Here we see an 18th century image of the Tower of London, and of course next to it, over to the right, the old parish, the lost parish of St Katharine's by the Tower. The Liberty of the Tower of London, Hayward's and Gascoigne's Survey of London, 1597, and the buildings in a line over to the extreme right, and the ones marked in yellow at the bottom, they are the Liberty of the old St Katharine's by the Tower. And of course it gets its name from the Tower of London that we see here. And that concludes part 3. I hope you all enjoyed. Our next upcoming video will be the life of Charlotte Ann Lydia Everton, But in between that, you'll have all the sequence of photographs that I've taken from in and around St Katharine's Dock. So, I'll see you all soon, and thanks for watching.